Well, hello and welcome to this month's webinar called How Smart is Your Call Routing? There are many ways to route a call or direct a call, but from simple hunt groups all the way through to multimodal, intelligent robo-routing. Okay, I made the last one up, but it's not far from what a lot of providers are promising. You can see on my slide here, the next slide, some of the options that we have, including least idle, direct routing hunt groups, the multimodal routing routes. So in this webinar, I hope to demystify a few of these terms and then show you a high-level view of how to implement them in IPscape. We're going to start with hunt groups and then get a little bit more complicated with skills-based routing, then move on to how you can optimize your service level through routing and dynamic routing, then move on to business rules-based routing, data-directed routing, and value-based routing. So these are all really good ways to pass information about your customers to your agents and direct them to the most suitable agents. After we've had a look at the different types, we're going to have a look at the web services function in IPscape and show you how you can use that to talk to third-party systems. This is only a high-level view of what you can do. And at the end, I'm going to run a poll to see how many of you are interested in seeing more how-to style webinars. And that's what we've got on for today. So going to have a look at some routing, and hopefully some of this will be useful in your businesses. So let's take a look at the first sort. The most simple type of routing is the hunt group. So in that case, you've got, as you can see here, you've got a customer. They call just one number, and that number is dedicated to a particular department, like sales or service, and the call goes directly to them. It goes to that department, and then we'll try one phone, then the next phone, and try and hunt for someone who's available. With IPscape, we get a little bit clever, and we use the least idle, where we've got the customer calls and then hits IPscape, and then it will go to the advisor that's been waiting the longest. And they call that, or some people call it, the least idle method of call routing. So that's great, and then in IPscape you can further complicate this or make more effective by assigning priorities to each of the agents. But in its simplest form, it's just who's been waiting the longest. The next sort of routing I want to look at is skills-based, and you can also do this in IPscape. But just to give you an idea of what it is, here we've got a Spanish-speaking customer, and all agents are, the moment they log in, are assigned to different queues related to their skills, and that happens at an administrative level. And then the actual agents themselves just log in, and then you have a queue for each one. So we'd have a Spanish-speaking queue, an English-speaking queue, and a French-speaking queue. And then within each of those queues, we have different priorities. So the idea is with skills-based routing is to make sure that the agent, the caller, gets the most qualified person who's available at the time. So in this example, if this were the Spanish queue, we could then assign agents to different priority groups within it. So I've only shown 2 priority groups here. There are actually 3 in IPscape that you can use, but for my most fluent Spanish speakers, I'll put into priority group 1. And then in priority 2, those that speak less Spanish. And then in priority 3, we could even put someone who can just take a message in Spanish. And that's basically the idea of how we implement skills-based routing in IPscape. So that is skills-based. We can then start to get a little bit more smart with the routing using dynamic and service level routing. So in addition to all of the other things that we're doing, it's a good idea to have a plan to optimize your service levels. Sometimes the people with the required skills are just not available, and that leads to longer wait times, abandoned calls, and lower service levels. To mitigate that, it's wise to have a strategy in place, and IPscape can facilitate that kind of strategy. So if callers have been waiting too long, you can move them onto a backup queue. So this is a second queue that happens. So in this picture, you can see the customer calls in. The primary people on the first queue aren't available. So what happens is this call is then passed to another queue, which will hopefully have agents on it. So the way that we achieve this is by using an interactive join queue on this first queue. So the idea is that we set some thresholds that will force the call into the other queue, and this is what they call the dynamic kind of routing, where it will route to somewhere else if certain conditions are met. And in IPscape, you can see we've got a screen here that defines the interactive join queue object, and that's here. And here you can just set thresholds. So maximum hold period is 2 minutes. If 2 minutes is reached, it will then pass you to this backup queue. You've then got some other parameters that you can put in, some other thresholds. So if the maximum calls in queue exceeds 1, then again that call, the additional calls will be pushed into another queue. And then we've got an estimated wait time as well, which is based on average hold times and how many people are waiting. So we have various different ways to support dynamic and service level routing. Or routing, depending on how you want to say it. So there we have the thing. So basically you've got the customer, they get pushed through to another campaign. And another feature that we have in IPscape to support that is campaign priority, where basically this allows you to make sure that this backup campaign takes priority. So new calls so agents that are on 2 campaigns, if they're on 2 campaigns, they will take calls from the backup campaign first. So to do that, you give the backup campaign a priority of 1, which is the highest, and then for the primary campaigns, you give them a lower priority. So that means that people who've been waiting longer will get the agent when they become available. So that is our dynamic service level type routing. The idea, so the dynamic bit is passing it to another queue and another place, and the service level is the idea that this should improve your service level, so if people aren't waiting around endlessly for advisors, they can be passed to another queue, and that will be answered by someone else, even if they don't have the exact skills that are required. So of course this does lead to the fact that maybe the backup queue is going to be completely clogged as well, and that will be backed up as well. And we have several things that you can do to mitigate that as well. So in the most extreme case, you could forward this to another phone number. So if they've been waiting on the backup queue, again using this interactive join queue, you can then forward them to a professional answering service that you've employed. Or you could also put them send them to our voicemail object, where you can take details of how to call them back, or we actually have an automated callback there, and you can push an automated callback option, which means that when an available advisor is available, the caller will get an automatic callback. So we support dynamic and service level routing in several ways. And that is that one. So the next one we've got is business rules, and these are specific to each business and involves talking to another system, to a third-party system. And this is where it starts to get a lot more smart and hopefully more helpful to you. So now you've got the basics in place, your hunt groups, your priorities, your service levels are being optimized. You can now start to get a little bit smarter with your IVR. And a couple of examples of how you can do that and support your specific business objectives is, for example, to allow a VIP to bypass the IVR. We've implemented this with a couple of our clients, where it checks the HR system and will checks to see if they're sort of high-ranking C-level people, and just lets them bypass the IVR. You could also do it with something like low satisfaction customers. So people who've given low scores previously on satisfaction, you can route them to an advocate service advisor or someone who's used to dealing with this and a short wait time. Other things you can do is offer callers more self-service options. So you can offer various different things based on your business rules. So hopefully your routing can support that. And the way that we implement that in IPscape is using our IVR builder. And this is what it looks like in very simple terms. I've just taken a screenshot of it here, and I'll show you how the web service bit works live in the product later. But the idea is that when this caller arrives, he will hear this welcome message. And that's something that you pre-configure. So you just got the welcome to our business. Then the web service connector basically takes information from that call. So the moment the call hits the IVR, we have their caller information. So we have stuff like their CLI, the number they're calling in on. And we can pass that information to a third-party system through this web service connector. And it's a powerful feature that not many of our customers are using, but we've started to implement it across quite a few people, and I hope that you guys can see the benefit in it. So basically what this does, it connects to an HR system, which has a RESTful API exposed. So this is, and again, I'll show you an example of what one of those is later. And then we send the information, so the CLI information to the website, to your third-party web service. Then it returns some information to the IVR, which would be the status of the caller based on that. So it searches for that phone number and then passes the information of the status. So are they a VOP or not? I've done in this case. And then you use the branch on value object to explain that, to route the call. So from this object, we get an answer back, and it's just passing what it's taken from the third-party system into here, and then we'll send it down to a VIP queue or a regular caller queue. And we can have as many of these little arrows underneath here as you like, within reason, I think. But you can have a lot anyway. So there we have. We can branch on the values based on business rules. So that is that. This is the business rules idea. We've got another idea that again uses this the web services idea, which is this data-directed routing, which is taking it a step further, and the call can be based on customer information data that we have in either an HR system, or it could be an account system. We can do various things. So here I've actually got it going to the HR system, but it could be an account system. So for example, this is the one that we've got here. We've got a customer with an overdue account. So he calls in, and then in this instance, we've asked the caller to enter a customer ID. So they may be ringing up for support or some kind of service from our business, but they've entered their customer ID. The web server, this capture digits thing, so they can just key in their digits, then that gets passed to the web service connector, which then goes out to a third-party system, which could be the account system or the HR system. I've got HR on here, but it should say accounting system here, but it will then just speak to that system and return a status again. So and that would be whether they're in arrears or they're fine, they're fully paid up, or whatever you're most interested in. So I'm just using these as examples. So on the basis of that, it will then route you to the right queue on the basis of that. So if the web, it sends out again to the account system returns something, and then we pass that information to the IVR. Okay, so again, with just showing you some of the different uses for the web services connector, and it's really quite simple what IPscape does. It's just passing information to a third party in a standard format, then receiving it back, and it can pass dynamic information to that based on capturing the digits and any information that we can get, like CLI. Okay, so that there is data-directed routing. And yeah, as you can see, this one, you can follow the green arrows to the payments there. If their account was fine, it would then go to the department they actually wanted. So the last one that I'm going to have a look at is the value-based routing, and this is where, again, you can combine it with taking other sorts of information, and this can use things like a CRM to see what information we have about the person calling in already. And again, we can ask them, the caller, to put in a captured digits, or we can just take it from the phone number. And CRMs and that sort of thing are quite good, or very good, at searching for phone numbers. And so we can pass that information to them using the Web Service Connector again. So it's all the same service in IPscape, just using a different third party that we're connecting to. And it's all standard formatting that we're sending. We're sending requests, API RESTful requests to the database, and we can take the return values in JSON format. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when I show you an actual example. And that all sounds very complicated, but actually it's really quite a simple thing. But you will need, yeah, it does need a little bit of configuration. And that's really what I want to see, what kind of interest there is for this kind of information, for this kind of service. So let's take a look at this one. So in this example, the example I've got here is we've got a customer who may be coming up for their contract renewal, or there could be an escalated customer that we've had quite a lot of problem with, and they've got a status flag in the CRM. And what we want to do is, rather than just pass them to any old team, just on the basis that anyone could be there, we're going to send them to a retention specialist. So we have a queue that has people who are skilled at retention, or whatever it may be. And it doesn't have to be this, but this is an example that I'm using. So yeah, basically what it does is it takes that phone number, the CLI, or anything that they've entered on the keypad, and you need to add an extra object for it to do that, then passes that information to the third party, and bosh, into a branch on value. It takes that information and puts it into the, depending on what it's taken back, received back from the CRM, it then forces it to the queue that's required. So as you can see, I've added on a few extra queues here, and you can have many more than that. So those are the main sorts of routing that I wanted to go through, and they're certainly the main sorts that I've seen in IPscape, sort of with people, the kind of routing that people have wanted. What I want to do is sort of open this up and have a look at an example within IPscape and give you an idea of what's required. And to do that, I'm going to use an API. So in order to do this, there is a little bit of technical stuff, and you will need to have an API for the third party that you want to integrate with. So if you're integrating with Xero or something like that, the accounting system, then you'll need to find out information about their API. And it needs to be a RESTful API, but it's all built to common standards, so we can talk to a lot of different APIs. So as long as it's a RESTful API, we can talk to it, or a Web Service Connector can. The other thing you'll need is someone that is a little bit technical. So for that, I'm just going to show you a really high-level view of how to do this. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk to a free service that takes postcodes that have been keyed in on the keypad by the customer. So the IVR will prompt them to enter their postcode, and then on the basis of that, it will speak to this API. The API will return what suburb that is, or what state or it's in, and then on the basis of that, pass it to the right queue. So that's what I have in mind. So let's take a look at how we configure that. So I'm going to show you the IPscape workspace. So this is what it looks like, and I'll just show you the basic one that I've got set up to begin with. So here we've got the webinar. Oh, I've been timed out. That's great. So if we go into here, I'm just going to got loads of workflows then. So this is basically our IPscape IVR builder, And what we've got is a series of different objects in here. So the first one, I've just entered in my play sound, which is welcome to IPscape. That's great. Please enter your postcode, your 4-digit postcode into your keypad. That information will then get passed to the capture digits option, the capture digits workflow object. And if you put in the wrong amount of digits, it will then say you put in the wrong details, and there's a timeout period, which will just give you a couple of extra retries if you don't put in the right amount. And then it will pass the information that it's got once it's validated. So if it's got 4 numbers in it, great. It will pass it on to the next object, which is the web services connector. And we have that here. And what you can see here is the details of what it's taking. So it's taking the postcode that we received from the item above, and then it's going to output these 2 bits of information. So from the information that we are we got from the third party, we only want to take name and state. And then after that, we're going to pass it to another object, which is sayText. And what this will do is take the information that it's received from there and tell the person what state they're in, or whatever it is. So I mean, this is a simple idea, and what I'm basically just showing you some of the functionality there, and some more abstract things that you can do with your IVRs. So this could be used to quiz a CRM or a ticketing system, to give them a status update on their ticket. So the capture digits doesn't take the postcode; it takes their ticket number and then asks the database for the status of that ticket, and then says that ticket. So self-service options, lots of things you can do with this, and I'll show you some other examples once we've got this one working. So this is the API I'm going to be using. So you'll need some kind of API. So all of the big CRMs and accounting systems all generally have APIs, especially if they're web-based. And really, this is a web-based system thing, really. You probably could get it working with local ones, but generally speaking, I've seen this working with web-based third-party things. And what this website does is it takes the Aussie suburb, so you put in the name of the suburb, and then it returns this information like the name, the postcode, and what have you. So we're sending from our web service thing, we're taking this URL. So if I take this, copy, and put it into here. So it's a little bit clearer. So basically we've got the domain here, the endpoint that we're using, and then we've got the suburb. So I can put in any suburb here. So let's put in 2090, which is where I live. I put that in, and then I get a response from that API, which tells me that's Cremorne Junction. It's in New South Wales. And on the basis of this information, this is what this endpoint will return. And a lot of systems use this kind of standard way of talking to other systems. So this can be used with a huge amount of things. So basically, what we want to do is change it so that we insert this the number that the person on their keypad had into this endpoint. Okay, for want of a better word. So we can do this with any one of those. So if we go to 2000, so this is a great little service, it's free, and we can do lots of things. So we can see that's the rocks. So, and the way that we do this in IPscape is in the integration section here, and there's a web services bit where we can define the web service. So again, I'm going to have a more technical one on exactly how this works. I just want to show you the overview of how it can work with a simple example. So what we have here, you go up to here in web services. If you don't see this, it may not be enabled in your instance, and just let me know, and we can get that enabled for you, and we'll go from there. So web services is here, and we've got that here, so we can give it a name. Then we've got various different methods, and the ones that are required, will be defined by the person that supplies the API. So in this instance, the API provider, Australian Suburb and Postcode API, requires a get method, and we can ask various things. So I put in the website details. I then put in the information here, and this little bit here makes it dynamic. So this will now mean that I can insert, I'm defining here the bit that I want to insert from my IVR. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much. There will be another webinar later on how to do this and what you can use in here. Suffice to say that I'm using one without authentication, so this anyone can do. But for your Salesforces and your ServiceNows and Zendesks and all of these things, you'll probably need a request header, and we have the functionality to do that. So you can send API keys and all sorts of authentication to make this safe, okay, and secure. So once you put in the dynamic bit and configured it, you can then define what you get back. So what this does when you send this request, it sends back all of this information, and we're just not interested in every bit of that information. So what we need to do is parse that, and we say here, we define what it is, what bits of information. So I only want to see the name of the suburb and the state, and that's where I define my response. I can then test whether my configuration has been good, and I can do that by putting it into my test tab here, and then I can just put in a test to see what would be returned to my IVR. So on the basis of my configuration on the first tab. So if I put in 290 or 2000, let's put 2000 in. And then go to send. We'll then see what we get back. So this is the full thing that comes back. This is what would come back all the way, but we don't want that. We want to parse it, and we have done. We've said that we actually just want the rocks and New South Wales. And on the basis of that information, we can then pass it to the right department, or we can just say, that's the rock. So we can have this as an information giving service if we wanted to, as self-service information service if you really wanted to. Otherwise, you could maybe parse the state and say, on the basis of that, I want to forward it to the New South Wales team. If it's somewhere in Victoria, obviously you do the same. So in that instance, let's try 3000. What do we get if we get that and send? And then in that, so for here, we can see we've got that Melbourne and Victoria. And again, we get everything, but we've actually only said we want this bit. So that's the configuration of that, and this can take a little bit of setting up, as I say, but it's a really, really powerful tool. I'll show you how you can access this web service now that you've configured it. If we go back to our resources, we then say in here, go back to here, and then we've got the web service thing. We then, basically, this is the bit that goes out to the third party. That one was called Web Service Connector. It's actually called Postcode Lookup. So that thing that we've just configured, that's there. We say which bit is the dynamic bit. That's the bit that comes from upstairs. So this is the input, as in this is the bit that we send to the third party. And then this is the bit that we want back from them. This is where we've said, this is what we want back. And that's what we'll pass on to the next object, and then say that text. So in this instance, I've said this is what we're going to do, and this is a text-to-speech thing, so it's going to say your postcode is, and then this syntax means look at the web service connector and take whatever it's sent back. So to have a look at some use cases for that, I've set up some other ones where you could do it to a campaign. So on the basis of that, we can take a look at this. So it's the same thing, capture digits, forward the digits to the web service connector and just join a queue, and then the information that we've got back from the queue, we can merge into the script so that you know that this person's come from Melbourne or wherever whatever state that they tapped into the into the phone keypad. So that can also on that queue, when it will present just to anyone in the inbound sales team, but it will present it can present the information about their location or whatever to the agent in the script that they see. We can also do something like this. So this is another one I was messing about with, to do it to states. So if you had a department or a queue for each state, what you could do is ask them to put in their postcode, then go to the web service connector, it goes out, returns the value, and then sends them to the state, Victoria, or whichever queue is dealing with that department. So that's great. That's quite a technical thing there. I have got. I want to do some more webinars on this subject with more technical issues. Sorry, more technical questions, which will answer more technical questions. And I would like to do a poll to see what you would like to see more of. So I've got a poll that's going to pop out to you in a moment, and I'm going to send it out to you. I've not used this functionality in the thing yet, but I'm going to send it to you. Okay, and that should be sending out to you. So what I'd like to know is which type of routing would you like to know more about? So I put some things there. So it looks like 100% of you have thus far. Okay, it's beginning to split out a little bit. So that's very, very interesting. So we'll let you put in some answers there. Okay, great. I've got 40% have voted. 56, lovely, lovely. So it's good to see that we're getting some feedback on this. And what we can do is once we're finished with this, and I'll take a look at the responses and see if we can arrange another session, or maybe give you a call and find out what how you can implement it in your business. So that's great. Well, it all seems quite evenly matched at the moment. I'll give you a couple more moments to put in a response, and then I'll see if I can share the results with you. So I've closed that down now. Thank you very much, everybody, for voting. It looks like everybody would like to know a little bit more about all of it. So that's great, but it's good that we've had the poll. I can open it up for a couple of questions if you can put them into the panel on the right-hand side, and see if there's anything that you would like to ask. If not, I'll be sending out more information about it. Excellent. Right. Okay. So I can see there's a couple of questions here, but it looks like I've answered those ones. If anything does occur to you, just let me know via there'll be some emails coming out afterwards letting you know where the recording is for this. That really concludes this month's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you for the next one.